Welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Here to talk all things hockey are your hosts, Brad Crisco, Ryan Hanna, and Evan Lobsinger.
It's quieter in here.
Is it?
Well, I mean, I'm further from you. The room does seem much bigger when I'm this far from you. And there's a big decrease in overall fidgeting and rubbing of hair and beard and chest. And Evan would have had a tough time today. I just mowed the lawn earlier, so allergens everywhere. It would have been game over. So, Mika was born 6 years ago. We started this podcast before Mika was born.
Yep. We started this podcast before Crystal was pregnant.
It's messed up, man. It's really messed up.
It was a long time ago.
Welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast, folks. On this off-season for the Red Wings, on this off-season edition, we are down a host. Evan Lobsinger has been arrested on the charges of selling counterfeit crystals in some island nation. So we're working on posting his bail. So it's just Brad and I. Brad, thanks for sticking it out.
I'm here mostly.
On this episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast, we're going to be talking to you about Red Wings hockey, some news in the world of the Red Wings, Captain Dylan Larkin switching his agency, which has caused, for some reason, a little bit of a kerfuffle, so to speak. Barry Trotz has reportedly met with the team, and some news regarding some administration and people adjacent to the Red Wings. We'll be talking about the playoffs. Brad and I are going to have a very civil discussion on the Calgary overturned goal, and I'm sure it's going to be very normal and very calm, and it's not going to take a lot of editing of this screaming at that part.
It should be easy, because I will convince you very quickly that you are wrong. won't take much.
And we'll be talking about a prospect that is really relevant to Red Wings fans. You'll probably have heard his name, an option for the 8th overall pick, and he plays center. So I know a lot of people are big on this person, this prospect being drafted by Yzerman. So we'll see where that one goes. Before we do that, I first want to, oh my God, this table's a mess. I hardly prep this room. Look, Evan's got, and everything goes to hell. Before we do that, I first want to tell you about the Jamie Daniels Foundation and the work that you all have done to help us raise money for the Jamie Daniels Foundation over the past season plus. So at the start of last season, alongside Prashant Iyer, we started the Wings Money on the Board campaign, wherein you made pledges based on the Red Wings season. Good, bad, big, small events. You pledged whatever amount that you could or wanted to. And throughout the year and at the end of the season, we tallied that money up, and you have raised over $29,000 for the Jamie Daniels Foundation so far. Once the Calder Trophy is announced, I know a lot of other pledges will trigger, and then we might hit our stretch goal of $30,000. So visit jamiedanielsfoundation.org to find out more about what they do, and Wings Money on the Board. If you have donated or if you are planning to donate, thank you all so very much. Speaking of Prashant Iyer, the If I Were Steve Yzerman series part 2 is up on the wingedwheelpodcast.com blog. So go check that out. The link will be in the description. It is all about coaching options, a comprehensive list of most of the most relevant coaching candidates for Yzerman and the Red Wings. So it's still up to date because Barry Trotz hasn't been hired out. So there's that. Okay, why don't we start off here with Barry Trotz. So it has been reported that he has indeed met with Detroit. Although I do like whenever people talk about, where Barry Trotz has been. It's like, he's spoken to Winnipeg. Winnipeg has confirmed this for us. They shared his hotel room. He's spoken to Philadelphia. Philadelphia has said exactly this to him. Here are photos of him on the streets in Philadelphia with a sandwich in hand. Vegas is rumored to be announcing the hiring of Trotz on X date at X time. The GM will be wearing this color shirt with this tie. And then we believe he's spoken to Detroit. That's all we can confirm. So, and he's also going to speak. Those are all real teams that are in on Trotz, and he's also going to speak to Dallas, as it came out a little while ago that they are going to be looking for a new head coach over there. So that's a lot of competition. And you mentioned this on previous episodes, Brad. That's not, it's not to say that Detroit's not a desirable destination, but there's a lot there depending on what Trotz wants that would outweigh what Detroit could offer.
Yeah, I mean, obviously with the coach of Trotz's, I don't know, call it talent, he's probably not keen on a rebuild. And, where the Red Wings are at in the rebuild is very much up for debate. A team like Dallas, who's in a better position to win now, Vegas, Winnipeg, those are teams that are very clear in we want to win this year and we want to win the Stanley Cup. There is no waiting around. If it doesn't happen next year, it's a bad season. And that is, I assume, what Trotz wants. The one thing that I was kind of thinking about, and this is just spitballing, because if he's interviewing with Detroit, it obviously means he's considering it, or else he wouldn't even take the interview.
Right.
Right. Are they likely? No. The only thing I could kind of justify why, if I were Barry Trotz, I would pick the Red Wings, kind of couples with the rumor that he was getting into management, because honestly, I don't think Steve Yzerman's going to let him have a whole hell of a lot of control in terms of that. But where Trotz could have some input is because the Red Wings are kind of around that stage where they're quote unquote coming out of the rebuild. And they are probably in the market of bringing up good prospects, acquiring better players, and, in turn, moving up the standings from this point. He could have a lot of input into what type of team he ends up with.
Yes. Yeah.
Barry Trotz isn't going to sit over Steve Yzerman's shoulder saying, draft this guy, sign that guy, make this trade. I don't think Steve Yzerman would allow that, but Trotz could go, I would like this type of defenseman. I would like this type of forward, and we're going to deploy this type of system. Build the team that you best can to accommodate that. And Yzerman can go, yep, that's totally reasonable. I will do that. So if Trotz is serious about the management, kind of, building a team to his liking, that's probably the only advantage where Detroit could offer a lot of things that other teams couldn't, just because of where they're at, the cap flexibility to have, the sheer volume of prospects and picks they have. Trotz could, over a couple of years, end up with a team very much to his liking. Now, obviously, if you're a Red Wings fan, do you want a coach to have that much input? Sure, that's very much up for debate. We could argue the merits of that till we're blue in the face, but I think that the one advantage Detroit could have, Yzerman willing.
That's a really good point, right? So, Brad, you mentioned this on a previous episode where you said, and just now, obviously, where you said Yzerman's not the kind of GM who's very hands-off. I also don't think he's standoffish or controls everything that happens in and out, right? Look at Pat Verbeek and what he's doing. Look at Julian Brisebois and what he's doing. Especially Julian Brisebois should have been the first name there. He might go on for a third consecutive cup. He has his brain trust and he has his circle and he leans on people. He brought in Nick Lidstrom for that very reason. And so you're right in that whoever he brings in as a coach will at least have the option to influence. When we talk about the rebuild, we've talked about it in essentially one single dimension from almost the time we started this podcast, and that's drafting. Who are you going to bring in via draft? You would love to talk about who you're going to bring in via trade, but this is the NHL, and further, this is Steve Yzerman. So there is no predicting when a trade is going to happen, and the only thing that you can say confidently is that there'll be few and far between, because that's just the way the NHL works. So we've talked about how you're going to shape this team via draft. But yeah, as free agency opens up and as you start to use that cap space, the kind of free agents you bring in is going to matter. The kind of guys that you pick in the third to fifth round that you're going to want guys that are going to fit a system, because you're going to hope the coach stays for a long time. You're going to want free agents who are going to help elevate those guys that you just drafted. And it really just depends on what kind of tool the coach wants to use, and the tool being the player. Not tool like, me and you. But in all seriousness, there is going to be a benefit to a coach who knows what he wants there. And not to say if the Red Wings or Yzerman brings in a coach who doesn't have strong opinions in that regard, that it would be a bad thing. But yeah, it's a good point. Trotz doesn't necessarily have to have no control if he does choose to come to Detroit. So we'll see. Again, I think Winnipeg for the hometown sense, Vegas for how close they are. I don't know that Philly is more appealing to Detroit, just objectively speaking.
Yeah, I don't know what than Detroit. Philly is at all, unless Philly's appeal would simply be
cheesesteaks.
Whatever the other teams offer, we will outbid them.
Yeah.
That's about the only advantage Philly could, in theory, have, because, where they are as an organization in terms of a rebuild or going for it, they are trailing behind multiple other teams in the race for both reasons. So, but again, if every other team's offering $5 million and Philly comes along and says, we'll give you $8 million, well, Barry Trotz is going to Philly.
I also can't even comment on what it's going to be like to pay a coach like a superstar coach, right? Because those contracts, they ballooned for a long time in the Babcock to Toronto era, and they've since come down a little bit. Rod Brindamore, I think, screwed over a lot of coaches with the contract he took. We've not run into with the Red Wings any internal salary cap, big problems with that. But again, the coaches don't count against the salary cap, so we don't know if there's going to be any question there. But they're not paying Jeff Blashill anymore, so it's not as if they're paying two coaches like they fired one. So that's an important distinction to make. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. I'm not going to bed praying for it every night. I don't think it's that entirely likely, but I do think it's an option. And like you said, the fact that he took that meeting, it's one leg up on I'm sure a lot of other teams who would love to have been in the room. And
if he took that, and if that interview did happen, well, ownership had to sign off on it. So
yeah,
they're at least considering the idea of paying him.
Yeah. Okay, some news about Captain Dylan Larkin, who is coming up on the last year of his contract. He is switching his representatives, his agency, to Matt Williams, Pat Brisson, and CAA. So he switched away from his previous agency. And let's just clarify, that isn't an entirely uncommon thing. Pat Brisson's clients, the top of the list here, John Tavares, Patrick Kane, Jonathan Taves, Kopitar, Crosby, Giroux, Duchesne, Hughes, Pettersson. You go to CAA, that's a big hitter. That is a big name in the room, and that is a star player who's coming up on a massive, what will be the biggest contract of his career in all likelihood. But what is interesting about it is his previous agency put out a statement, which was like, it read a little, to me, it was a little bit like sour grapes, but why don't I read it out to you? So it's from KO Sports, Kurt Overhart, who was was part of his previous representation. He said, from a relationship standpoint, Dylan Larkin would work primarily with my business partner, Joe Oliver. Through the past 11 years, Joe has thoughtfully guided Dylan through countless matters, both on and off the ice. There was never a single issue raised between Dylan and Joe for the entirety of their professional relationship, and Joe is completely blindsided by this decision. For the past several months, Joe has been working directly with Dylan in preparation to negotiate his contract extension with the Red Wings. As with all of our clients, our work on behalf of Dylan was at the highest standards in all situations. And then they finish by saying, we are very disappointed in his decision and the timing. So I just want to preface this. I don't think this has any bearing on anything that Red Wings fans who are looking at the cap hit in the impending contract. I don't think there's anything to worry about in that regard, right? Like, this doesn't strike me as something that will materially affect the cap.
Could. Larkin's about to get the biggest contract of his life, and he's probably going to want to maximize that, as he should.
As he should, yeah.
So I don't think this is Dylan Larkin saying, okay, get me the hell to unrestricted free agency. I want to absolutely maximize. This is him saying, I know what I'm worth. Get me what I'm worth.
What I'm saying is this agency seems like so shocked and surprised, and they said they had already started the work. So to me, this is one of two things. And without knowing Dylan personally and without knowing any inside information on this, something went wrong in terms of, the relationship between Dylan and the agency, which is whatever. Or, like you said, Dylan Larkin thought, this is the biggest contract of my career. I only have one shot at this. I'm not entirely confident that this is as big of a hitter as I want in the room. I'm going to bring in Pat Brisson. There's also the sense that, like, these guys all talk to each other. Like, NHL players talk to each other. So Dylan's talking to his buddies across the league, and they're like, hey, CAA and Brisson and I can't remember who the other name was here. Matt Williams. It's like, they got in the room for me before. We got everything we wanted. Or they're super easy to work with, or they're so accommodating, or they're just as hands-on as you like, or they keep you just informed as you like. It's just a matter of preference. And yeah, I think that's a pretty normal thing. But the statement was funny. I was like, I don't really understand what's happening here.
It could be so many things. I have a hard time even speculating on it. It could be something just like a philosophical difference. Larkin could be like, here's what I want my next contract to look like. And they could be going, don't know if that's realistic, my guy. You're not getting a no trade clause at, this amount of money, this amount of turn, or something along those lines. Like Larkin going to them and going, this is what I want. And them going, we don't think that's realistic. And him going, all right, then I'm going to find someone who believes they can do it.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's what it is, but it could very well be that simple.
So it's funny because with Larkin, you almost have the naive sense, and this is like from a fan perspective, that he's going to come in at a cheaper contract than you think. But then you just got to think about it for a second, right? Like, this is going to be the biggest contract he's ever going to sign. He's probably going to want to maximize term, and he's going to want to maximize dollars, unless he wants to get tricky with it in terms of, the cap's going to go up halfway through, so let's sign a 4. But let's be real. This is going to be a 7 or 8 year deal. A lot of people are saying you have to, for a star center who's your number one center, you're going to be paying at least 9. And Red Wings fans will have wanted to think, he's going to want to take that hometown discount, and he's going to want to make sure this team can win around him. He might take 7.5 to 8.5. The 9 seems more likely to me now, but again, who's on the other end of the negotiating table is also a big part of this.
Yeah, Larkin's contract negotiating is going to be fascinating, because I think one of the big sticking points in this debate, at least in the fan realm, will be, what do you pay a number one center? Well, this is what you pay a number one center. Okay, well, let's look at the other number one centers that got paid that. Oh, Larkin's numbers aren't close to that. Right? So, because we've always argued for years and years, he's a tweener, that like he is a number one center, but he's not one of the top number one centers in the league. So are you going to pay Dylan Larkin like an Alex Barkov, like an Austin Matthews, like
No.
what Nathan? No, of course you're not. But what is Larkin going to try to
I
get?
hope they pay him like Nathan McKinnon.
Yeah. What Nathan McKinnon is going to get. Is Larkin worth that? No, obviously not. Is Larkin going to try for that money? No. But he's probably going to try and get really damn close.
Yeah.
So, like, what is a roughly point per game center worth? And that's where it's going to be tricky, because there's some comparables. It's not a ton of comparables. And, he holds the cards of, well, I'm your best center. I'm the best you got. You got to pay me what I think I'm worth, or I'm going to walk in a year. And Yzerman goes, well, we're not paying you $9.5 million. You're not worth $9.5 million. And then it turns into this game of chicken, right? So
that's just one path, though.
That's one path. And yeah, and of course, like that's me basically making a very simple statement complicated. Larkin's going to go, I'm worth this. Yzerman's going to go, no, you're worth this. And then they spend the next year trying to hammer out the number in between.
Yeah.
That's all it comes down to. But because Larkin is in the unique position of being the only good center on a bad team, he does hold a couple extra negotiating points that other players in his exact scenario might not, because they could be playing behind an Austin Matthews or something like that.
Yeah, things working against Detroit's favor here. It's their only good center, let alone star, good center, who's worthy of that top line. He is an unrestricted free agent. He's in his
year.
Yeah, upon expiry, he is in his playing prime-ish in terms of how people treat contracts, and he has the leverage in that sense. Things working in Detroit's favor. He loves playing for Detroit. He has the C on his chest. This team means a lot to him, and obviously the fan base has accepted him in what is a very prestigious club of captains, and that does mean something. So, my prediction. This will be maybe more expensive than people are giving it credit for. I don't think you're going to get Dylan Larkin on a $7 million a year deal, but I do think this will get done maybe relatively quickly. I don't want to say like as of July 2nd or anything, or July 13th. That's actually the date everything got moved. I don't think as of July 13th that'll happen. But relatively soon. And I think it's going to be a number that rewards Larkin for the position he's in, but is still fair because it's Steve Yzerman and his crew on the other end of the table. I don't see this being a big drawn out thing. I'm not necessarily scared by the fact that it's CAA representing him or anything like that. I think that's just a good sports agency representing a good player, and both of them have a pedigree, and it makes sense that they're working with each other. That's all.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be super contentious, but obviously there's going to be a lot of... Well, actually, I should say, happens with some of the points you said that work in Detroit's favor, I actually don't think work in Detroit's favor. Like the fact that he's a fan favorite and the captain, I think that works in Larkin's favor. I'm your guy. Don't you want to keep me? Pay me.
Yeah, I don't know, but it's different, right? Like I think everyone knows that Larkin is negotiating here as unrestricted free agent. So if he doesn't stay, like let's say in an alternate universe where he doesn't stay, and I don't think that happens. I don't think Yzerman lets him walk for nothing ever. I think people would read that situation of, okay, well, then that's at least partially Larkin's choice. I don't see that as being a huge chip in his favor for this negotiation.
You never know, though.
Yeah, you never know.
You never know. The fact that he went out and switched agents, that is the one thing it's an indication of, is at the very least, he's not screwing around.
You have to hope that that's just like a personal difference with the previous agency, and that's why he switched.
Yeah, it sounds bad. You don't want to say things went sideways, but it's probably a better sign if things went sideways.
Yeah, because then it's like, oh, well, these guys aren't working out for me anymore because of X thing that happened, or I didn't like this from the person I was working with. What agency am I going to go with? Default, good agency for good players. End of story. Let's get this contract wrapped.
No way to know. Everything's speculation. And until we start getting a few weeks into where the negotiating window has been open, or the window where he can sign the contract is open, I don't think we're going to get a very good feel for this. Because also, too, like, Larkin's been hurt a bunch the last couple of years, which is probably going to factor in a little bit. So I don't think it's going to be all I'm saying is I don't think it's going to be as simple a negotiation as a lot of people think it might be.
Interesting.
Because there's a lot of gray area here. We're like a guy like Nathan MacKinnon. Hi, you're one of the best players in the league. We've underpaid you forever, and this is going to be the last big contract you ever sign. We're just going to fill out the 8 years. You fill in whatever number you feel is fair. That's not the case here, right?
The Players Association might kidnap Nathan MacKinnon because he's probably going to try to negotiate down his number again.
Yeah, like if Nathan MacKinnon makes under like 12 and a half, what a bargain.
It's going to be interesting because, again, like I mentioned before, it's going to influence what Bertuzzi makes, provided he signs as well. And it's also going to be our first look at a major pillar in Steve Yzerman's salary structure for the Red Wings' true core.
It also could impact what Seider makes.
It will impact what Seider makes.
Because a lot of teams say, you don't make more than this guy.
Yeah. And Yzerman's, you look back at the Yzerman era and the Lidstrom era, Lidstrom was used as that benchmark. And that's what helped get Zetterberg, Datsuk, those guys who were coming in a way that made sense for Detroit, where for that like 4 or 5 year span where they turned into one cup and one cup finals loss, they were able to fit those players in. We'll see. The fact that we see Tampa Bay on their way to potentially a third straight cup bodes well in terms of how Yzerman sets up his teams, but credit to Julian Brisebois and credit to zero state income tax in Florida as well.
It helps.
It certainly helps. Some other news. Valtteri Filppula won gold with Team Finland in the World Championships today. Congratulations. And joined the Triple Gold Club. So, Stanley Cup, Olympic gold, and a World Championship gold medal. So good on Val, former Red Wing in his glory. And then some updates from Red Wings administration. Ryan Rizmierski is no longer listed on the Red Wings hockey ops directory. He was the co-chief amateur scout for Detroit for the past 3 seasons with Jesse Wallin. So just some shuffling of staff and administration going on in the background. That kind of thing happens around this time every year. So that update coming through. I think Max noticed that. So
what was his exact role?
Co-chief amateur scout.
Interesting.
Yeah, for the past 3 seasons.
Because I've always been curious about what might happen internally with the Red Wings scouting when you look at the European versus North American splits. So if he was one of the guys in charge of, like, if North American drafting was kind of more his domain, that could be a curious move just because of how poorly they've done in North America. But That's just purely speculation based on absolutely nothing.
There's also the sense that still has time to turn around, right? Like Carter Mazur from last draft has
looking all right.
Yeah.
Kosa's looking all right, although I feel like goalies should be in a different category entirely.
You need to be like a seer with a crystal ball.
Yeah. Hannes has turned it around a little bit.
He's interesting.
But overall, the last, decade or so drafting out of North America has left a lot to be desired.
I agree. There is a lot to be desired, but one point I'll make, and it's not a counter, but it's just a qualifier. Look at who the Red Wings have taken with their top picks. Edvinsson, Swedish. Raymond, Swedish. Seider, German. Zadina, he played in the Q.
He was drafted out of North America.
Rasmussen drafted out
of North America.
Cholowski.
Out of North America.
Svechnikov.
Out of North America.
Dylan Larkin.
Hey, here we go.
That point went sideways fast. Because in my head,
your picture, you got all these European names, and they're like, oh, no, they played here.
I said Zadina in my head. I'm like, check. But I was like, but it's fair. You have to base it on where they played. I'm like, Zadina did not play. He did not get drafted to the Czech Republic. He got drafted out of the Q. Well, shame on me, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. Why don't we first, we're going to talk about the playoffs and some prospects, but why don't I first mention that this episode of the Winged Wheel podcast is proudly brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook, a sponsor that gives hockey fans what we really need, even more excitement in the game. There's so many reasons why FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook. They're simple to use with great odds on different betting markets, giving you more action every game day. Plus, they're tons of fun with unique bet types like same game parlay and exclusive promos on the biggest events. And when you win, you get your winnings safely in as little as 24 hours. Now listen to this. FanDuel is letting you place your first bet risk-free up to $1,000. Just place a bet on any game and FanDuel will refund you up to $1,000 back in site credit if you don't win that first bet. If you win, you keep the cash. If you lose, you get up to $1,000 back in site credit. Now what we want you to do is download the FanDuel Sportsbook app to get started with that risk-free bet and be sure to sign up with promo code WWP so they know the Winged Wheel podcast sent you. That's FanDuel Sportsbook, promo code WWP.
You must be 21 and older and present in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Illinois, West Virginia, Indiana, Colorado, Iowa, Tennessee, Virginia, or Michigan. First online real money wager only. Site credit is non-withdrawable and expires in 14 days. Restrictions apply. See sportsbook.fanduel.com for details. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-522-4700 in Colorado, 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa, 1-800-9-WITH-IT in Indiana, 1-800-GAMBLER in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Illinois, or Virginia, Tennessee Redline 1-800-889-9789, 1-800-GAMBLER.net in West Virginia, or call 1-800-270-7117 in Michigan.
You ready to argue about the playoffs, Brad?
Always.
Let's start with the easy one first. The hockey gods are sometimes a little heavy-handed with how they write the script. It's a little cheesy. It's a little campy. But God, do I love it. It's so good. When Darren Helm scored that goal with like 5-ish seconds left to put Colorado up in Game 6, heartbreaking for St. Louis fans. It happened in St. Louis. They thought they were going to OT and they might have had a chance to send this back to Game 7 in Colorado. Darren Helm takes a slapper, scores. I thought, oh, what is every Red Wings fan thinking about right now? His overtime winner in Game 5 against Chicago in the Western Conference Finals in 2009, where I think they canceled the Stanley Cup Final that year. They didn't play it.
Yeah, this was the first COVID.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, that's great. Every Red Wings fan is thinking about that. It's really cool. You never want to see Colorado have any modicum of success, but hey, in all seriousness, it's great to see Darren Helm do well over there and make an impact. So I'm pulling up the clip of that and I look at it and I'm like, oh my God, May 27th, 2009, to the day 13 years prior, the exact same date. And I was like, this is all scripted. The simulation is a little much, but it was good. So that was really, really, really cool to see. Congrats to Darren Helm. And again, a lot of people have mixed feelings on rooting for Colorado, but seeing him score that goal, that big of a goal, 13 years apart in his career, that is massive.
First playoff goal in 6 years.
The amount of people who...
Poor guy.
The amount of people who were talking about it on Twitter, and I was reading the comments, I was genuinely laughing. They're like, Darren Helm's still in the league? Like, this highlights from a game that was on the Versus network. Like, he's ancient. Someone legitimately, they weren't kidding. They're like, I thought this was Darren Helm's son. That's how long ago. I was like, I feel old now. Like, it's not, guys, please. He left the Red Wings like very recently. Please don't make me feel this way. So yeah, why don't we start with that one? Colorado wins that series 4-2. It did get interesting there for a quick second.
Shouldn't have, but it did.
Shouldn't have, but it did.
Yeah, Darcy Kemper hasn't been great. Has me real excited for the Eastern Conference Finals now.
The Western Conference Finals?
Western Conference, sorry, yeah. Two, like, just teams with absolute superstars going in with shaky goalies. Oh, it could be beautiful. But yeah, no, Colorado let St. Louis hang around a little too long because there were long stretches of that series, multiple times, where Colorado just looked like they were on another tier of hockey than the Blues. But Colorado wasn't consistent with it. And they very frequently had mental lapses, significant ones, and at periods for stretches of time where they just didn't look like themselves. I mean, how do you not close that series out in Game 5 after Nathan MacKinnon scores one of the greatest goals we've seen in the playoffs in the last decade with like under 3 minutes left to give you the lead? You can't hold that lead.
That was, so we were recording last episode as 3-0.
Yep.
And the way that game went is it went 3-1 after, and then 3-2, and then 3-3 with under 5 minutes left in the third, and then Nathan MacKinnon scores with under 3 minutes left to make it 4-3, and then Robert Thomas tied it with under a minute left in the game, and then Tyler Bozak won it for St. Louis just a few minutes into OT.
If you want to be a Series Cup contender, like, you can't let stuff like that happen. Because as bad as Edmonton is in a lot of ways, and as much as we will and continue to make fun of a large chunk of their roster, yeah, Connor McDavid's not letting you off the hook with those mistakes.
Here's the thing. Yeah, Kemper hasn't been great, but I have more faith in Kemper against the Oilers than if Ville Husso made it through. Ville Husso's a great goalie, but he's not been good. He wasn't good at these playoffs.
No, you're absolutely right. And Darcy Kemper, I will still argue, is the best goalie in the Western Conference Finals.
Yeah.
So,
but I don't know. In games with Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl and Nathan MacKinnon and everything Colorado has, it almost doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't. You and Evan could be the goalies for this series, and I don't think it's going to make much of a difference either way.
Do I get their salary?
Sure, why not?
Evan wouldn't take that pay cut.
No, absolutely not. But yeah. So again, but the thing with Colorado, kind of branching off what I just said, is they're so damn talented that they were that inconsistent in that series, and they went up against a very damn good team in St. Louis and still won in 6. I think still won.
I think you're right. They're like, first of all, if you watch the series, if you look at the underlying numbers, whatever you want to do, Colorado's a better team through and through. I think you're right in that it was momentary lapses or just moments where St. Louis found it, right? Like they found a way to eke it out, tying the game twice and then winning it right in overtime. Like that's the kind of stuff that you have to do in the playoffs. But over the span of the series, Colorado was a better team. I wasn't surprised to see St. Louis give them a run. I think the way they did it was hysterical and what a wild series, but I wasn't surprised. But yeah, they poked holes. And I have yet to see a team in these playoffs who haven't had some kind of weakness or a hole poked in them. I think the least of which has been Tampa Bay, which is a horrifying thought because they're going on a three-peat now.
Yeah, they got filled by the Leafs in Game 1 and just kind of went, yeah, that's enough of that. Like, I mean, again, a lot of the problems with Colorado in the playoffs so far, against St. Louis, are kind of some of the problems that apply to Florida against Tampa in the sense of you can tell they haven't been there because they don't have the ability to just be completely locked in every shift like Tampa is, live and die with every shift, every period. But they're getting there. They obviously didn't fall as flat as Florida did and have the same problems to the same degree, but also they're probably more talented than Florida, so which helps.
Why don't we talk about the Battle of Alberta?
Yeah.
The only disservice that happened in this series was that it didn't go to 7.
Yeah. That series was everything everybody hoped it would be in terms of just chaotic, hate-filled fire wagon hockey.
Edmonton deconstructed Jacob Markstrom. Absolutely. And that belongs to the defense as well. Like that blame belongs to the defense. There were times where Markstrom was just completely exposed. I was talking to a friend of mine and he knows goalies, and he was saying like they keep getting him between his trapper and his pad, and they keep finding that spot. And then you watch, and you're like, yeah, he's like his trapper's lagging behind his elbow. It doesn't seem to be able to find that spot consistently. He keeps missing the puck there. And then there's times where Markstrom's fine, but the defense, like Edmonton's offense, is just overwhelming. Shots from everywhere, like high quality from angles that Markstrom's not expecting it. They just overwhelmed, and that's team offense, and then that's also game breaking talent in McDavid and Draisaitl and company. Like in every single way, they just completely overwhelmed Calgary. It seemed like they staggered. They won their first game, and then they staggered, and they were never able to regain their composure or their footing, and Edmonton just was relentless. Yeah, Edmonton let in 3, 1, 3, and 4 goals, so it wasn't like a defensive masterclass by them, but it didn't need to be. Because they didn't...
And 9. Don't forget the 9.
Right. I'm talking after the first game.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
But Edmonton scored under 5 goals once, and it was a 4-1 win. So we joked. We said, are the Edmonton Oilers just going to try to like McDavid and Draisaitl their way to the Cup Finals? Are they just going to like score 1 trillion goals and hopefully they only have 1 billion against? Yeah, honestly, maybe. I don't know how they're going to match up against McKinnon and the Avs. That's going to be one hell of a series. But man, Edmonton has proved a lot of people wrong, and I can't say for sure that they won't be able to do it.
I just want to point out that before that series, I picked them to win the series, and I
did. You actually?
Yep.
Good for you.
Yep. In 7, not 5.
5 has to be shocking to everyone. Even if you're an Oilers fan, 5 has to be shocking.
And when I got questioned on it, my entire justification was I don't know if I can bet against McDavid at this point. Spoiler, I'm going to bet against him in the conference final because holy shit, Colorado. But
yeah,
but I'm not going to feel great about it, and I'm not going to be confident in it. But yeah, I mean, Mike Smith literally tried gifting the Flames a game, and they still just pissed it away minutes later. I have a hard time deconstructing what went wrong with Calgary because everything went wrong with Calgary. Their top line wasn't dominant. Their depth scoring wasn't really there. Their defensive systems got absolutely shredded by the Oilers. Their Vezina goalie collapsed. Like, the perfect storm of everything just going horribly wrong. Because again, much like I said after the first round when I asked you guys that dumb hypothetical, it still holds up after 2 rounds of the playoffs, Ryan. If I told you Mike Smith has been bad, the Edmonton defense is slightly better than expected, but still bad, and they're in the conference finals, what would you say?
Who messed up? Like, what's wrong?
Yeah, here we are.
I would say how many Calgary players had to go, like, had devastating injuries and had to leave the playoffs?
And I responded, none.
Yeah, that would be bizarro alternate universe stuff that we're used to at this point.
And here we are.
You're right. Like, it's just been absolutely nuts. I love it. I think this is the kind of, you don't see this a lot. You could have been watching hockey for the last 20 years religiously. Every playoff round, every team, watch every game. You won't see this storyline a lot. It's not common. And honestly, in some eras of the NHL, it wouldn't have been possible. They would have just been shut down, clutch, grab, held, slashed, everything. But with increased scoring and with Connor McDavid, not talking about era adjusted or based on their time, being literally the best hockey player to ever grace this game in this league. And
he is the most talented hockey player that has ever existed.
And Leon Draisaitl tied with him in points.
Yeah.
With a bad ankle.
Yeah. On one leg.
I don't think it's a cakewalk for the Avs. I don't know that they have what it takes to stop what they just did to Calgary. I'm going to stop betting against Connor McDavid, and I'll take him to go to the Cup Finals here. In like 7, an excruciating 7, where it's going to be one of the ugliest Western Conference final wins you're going to see in a while, but I'll have to take Edmonton here.
McDavid and Draisaitl had to be like 2.5 points per game to get through Calgary. They're going to have to be close to 4 to get through Colorado, which I'm not entirely convinced won't happen.
It's very possible.
But Colorado, unlike Calgary, has the true superstars to go up against them. Like, don't get me wrong, Calgary's top line was great all year, and Johnny Gaudreau and Matt Tkachuk and Elias Lindholm, they're like star level players. They're not Nathan McKinnon. They're not Cale Makar. So I'm not. McDavid and Draisaitl might very well be the two best players on the face of this earth right now. But if they are, McKinnon and Makar are right there. And once you get past that, Edmonton doesn't have Landeskog, Rantanen, Kadri, Devon Toews. If this is going to be a matchup of star power, as crazy it is to say, the team with Connor McDavid has less star power.
These playoffs are so stupid in the best way.
I love it so much.
Speaking of stupid, Carolina still can't win on the road.
Yep. You know, they're 2 games away from setting the all-time professional sports record for only the home team winning in playoffs. Only the 2008 Celtics went 15 games to start a playoffs before a road team won.
That series is going to 7, back home to Carolina, where they have won every game. The Rangers have won every one of their home games because Carolina can't win on the road. Game 7, do we see the streak continue?
How can you bet against it?
You almost want to say the Carolina Hurricanes that you're seeing at home are the Carolina Hurricanes. Like, that is what that team should be doing. Even on their off nights, they find a way to win. The talent shows up. The goaltending is a bit better. The impact on the ice is a bit better. And they just kind of disappear on the road in different ways. Like, we're not going to get into the nitty gritty here, but yeah, how do you bet against it? But hockey's not a game of following patterns every time. What have we seen these playoffs other than breaking the mold, right? Tampa Bay lost a number 1 center and then swept the next round. Edmonton Oilers have a goalie who let in a puck from 130 feet out, and then in a previous round gave the puck away for a game-winning goal that led to eventually to a game-winning goal. And they won 4-1 against the team that I had winning the Stanley Cup in my bracket. Like, it's this whole series this whole playoffs is breaking the mold, and who knows, Shesterkin could go into Carolina and do it.
I mean, he had 2 apples next game, so he's going to do it by him damn self if he has to.
I love watching that guy dish the puck.
Oh, it's so fun.
I'm so happy we get to watch him in this league for a long time.
Do you know how happy I am that Mike Smith is in the conference finals right now and not the best puck handling goalie in the playoffs remaining, so we don't have to hear about that constantly?
Well, he's such a notable goalie in terms of everything he does on the ice. Like, he's a character.
I appreciate him because he's not boring. He's never boring.
Look at the disparity between the two Eastern Conference final, Vasilevsky and maybe Shesterkin. It could be Ranta and Kochetkov, or if Carolina makes it through. And then in the West, you have Mike Smith and Darcy Kemper. And that's not a knock. Like, I think Darcy Kemper is a phenomenal goalie, but Vasilevsky and Shesterkin might be the 2 best goalies on the planet right now.
Oh, they are the 2 best goalies on the planet right now. I don't know if there's a case for anybody else.
I will not hear this Jonathan Bernier slander. Just because he was hurt doesn't mean he lost his belt. Yeah, there's no game to jinx here. Game 7 is on Monday. We're recording this on Sunday evening, which means there's no blown lead that's going to happen because we talked about how, Colorado in Game 5 is going to put this away because they're up 3-0, and then, St. Louis goes and do what they did. So we'll see how that one turns out. And before next episode, we'll know what our conference finals are.
I just love that there's a path now with the way the rest of the playoffs are shaking down that Carolina could not win a single game on the road these entire playoffs and win the Stanley Cup. Because they have home. If they win, they have home ice advantage against Tampa Bay. And if Edmonton takes out Colorado, Carolina would have home ice advantage over Edmonton. Oh my God, we are so close to an 06 rematch. That just dawned on me.
Carolina.
That was one of the best cup finals of my adult life, was the chaotic mess that was Carolina Edmonton in 2006.
And with Rod behind the bench,
who was the captain of those Carolina Hurricanes. This time, the Edmonton Oilers' leading scorer is Connor McDavid, not Fernando Pisani, so their odds are a little better.
Fernando Pisani is still one of the funniest, playoff performer stories in modern hockey history. Like, who is this guy who just randomly was forced to be reckoned with, destroyed the championship Detroit Red Wings? It was one of the last things Steve Yzerman saw in his career, I'm pretty sure, was Fernando Pisani just lighting that team up. Playoff performer, and then just disappeared. Just gone.
Wow. This is truly the weirdest timeline.
Yeah, really.
And a lot, and we're close to the storylines of that year repeating. Carolina, the favored team, with if Kochetkov ends up in net, the rookie goalie going up against the revolving door of uncertainty in net for the Oilers. Like, this is kind of funny.
It's not going to be dull. It's not going to be a dull year at all.
And then, of course, I say that and Carolina will lose tomorrow and the streak gets broken. But I just kind of want to see a reality where they don't win a single game on the road and win the Stanley Cup.
A statistician's dream. Hockey analytics nerds are going to explode. Eye test nerds are going to explode. Everyone's going to explode. Neutral fans are going to have a great time. So I tried to move us to the next segment, Brad. But we, in that whole Battle of Alberta series, we didn't talk about the goal that wasn't. Calgary thought they were going up with, what was it, like 5 minutes left in that game?
About, yeah.
And, oh man, I can't get over that play because it was so heartbreaking. I'm going to admit something. I didn't see it live. I knew the context going into it, and I actually rewatched the game. And I really focused in on that goal. I wanted to see how it shook out live. And it was... Calgary thought they were going up 5-4 going into OT. They weren't, because the goal was eventually called back. Blake Coleman, after many 5-6 minutes of review, it was determined that he kicked the puck into the net, and it was no goal. It went to OT, and then who else other than Connor McDavid won it? Distinct kicking motion. Okay, Here's my thing, and I'm going to say it.
Here, let me go first because I'm going to argue out both sides of my mouth, and then I'll let you make your point, and then I'll tell you why you're ultimately wrong, okay? Because I'm going to argue both sides, because I disagree with parts of both sides of this argument.
Can I open?
Yeah, go for it.
I think it was a kick. But and I won't say any of my qualifiers, and you go, and I'll go after you're done.
So there's two sides to this argument. There's the side arguing he did it intentionally, and the side saying, no, he didn't, it's not a kick. Where I fall on this is there was a lot of chaos in the crease when it happened. Blake Coleman was falling down, yada, yada, yada. He's trying to keep his balance. Like, there was a lot happening in that very, very short amount of time from when he drove the net, bumped into the goalie, puck in the crease, him gliding past it, trying to keep his balance with the puck in front of him. The people who are arguing there's no way he could have known and tried to kick that, look at everything that was happening, those people are wrong. Professional level hockey players are absolutely coordinated enough to have the spatial awareness and the body awareness to know where that puck is and to be aware of the situation and to try and, however, using whatever part of their body, get that puck in the net. So I fully side with your side of the argument on here that he absolutely knew what he was doing.
Okay, so I didn't have to sit this far from you. You're not going to stab me in the chest today.
Here's where you're wrong. That wasn't a kick. He didn't kick the puck. He guided the puck into the net. He tried to put...
That's the sick
thing. No, because you're allowed to direct the puck.
You're allowed to redirect the puck.
Which is closer to what he did than an actual kick.
No. Redirect is when you, angle your skate so it redirects off of you. And, if the puck is going along the ice...
Here's where the argument gets cloudy, is whatever people argue, was that a redirection? No, not technically. Was it a kick? Definitely not a kick. He did neither of those things. He guided his foot to where the puck was going to be. All he did, to be clear about this, and again, as just in my brain as a hockey player, what I would do in that situation and what it looked like Coleman did is he basically turned towards the puck. There's the puck. I'm going to go towards it and try to get whatever the hell I can to make sure this damn thing goes in the net. His foot
certainly did that.
Yeah. His foot did not propel by a kick in the puck into the net.
I think it literally did. I think he propelled the puck into, and it was already going in. And and I think that's where you're getting hung up here. And that's heartbreaking, because had he not moved a puck that was already moving forward even more, this wouldn't be a discussion.
Yeah.
But I think he did. I think he literally propelled it forward further.
But not by and here's the whole point of my argument. This is the underscore to my thing. But not with a distinct kicking motion as it is written in the rule book. If 50% of the hockey world look at the same play and cannot come to a consensus on what it is not distinct.
Well.
And for a league that trumpets over and over again, if something is not conclusive, we go with the call on the ice. The call on the ice was good goal, and not one person on the face of this earth will be able to convince me anything about that was conclusive or distinct. Again, I side with you. He absolutely knew what he was doing.
Right.
I'm off. Nobody, he knew what he was doing. So I don't accept that argument against me. But it wasn't a fucking kick.
Okay. Rule 49.2. A goal cannot be scored by an attacking player who uses a distinct kicking motion to propel the puck into the net with his skate/foot.
Mm-hmm.
It's not different to what you said. That's
Yep.
a plain and
That's the
simple.
rule.
That's the rule. Here's the thing. I think that was a clear kick. I think that was a distinct kicking motion. Was it unnecessary? Was it a soft kick? Was it at game speed? Was it hard to distinguish? Yes. But I saw that replay for the first time and I said, yeah, he did. Like you said, Brad, you know how athletes are. He did that on purpose. And let's not gatekeep this with athleticism. Look at the way he went into that net. He stuck his knee out further to the point where he risked injury by smashing it off the post.
His leg hit the post because of him not moving his leg out of the way.
Had he not tried to kick that puck, he would have planted his foot sooner and he would have not smashed into the post like that. Anyhow, the part where I veer into now it's cloudy is they didn't call that right away. That didn't take a lot of review. So there's two things at play here. One, there's a discussion going on in the war room in Toronto and, it was inconclusive. Or two, this is one of the biggest calls they're going to make all playoffs and they want to give it the time and make sure it's right. But for me, I was like, the moment it went 5-6 minutes, then this is a thing.
Not distinct, not conclusive.
I think if they came back in 60 seconds and said kick, I would have thought, absolutely. There's no way you could even argue that. I understand why it's heartbreaking. I think it was a kick, Brad.
I will agree. He knew what he was doing, but to me, that's not a kicking motion. That is him changing his lane and stretching his leg out.
It sounds like you're describing a kick in its composite step.
But it's not, right? It's not a kick. It's basically I'm going to put my foot in a position where that puck is going to come to my foot.
No, that's not what happened, though. I'm watching.
No, that's not what ultimately happened. But that's what I think he was trying to do.
Sure, yeah. He had great vibes, good intentions, but he kicked it in the end.
Yeah, but it wasn't a kick. The steel of his skate never left the ice.
It left the ice.
Did it?
Yeah.
Not from the replays I saw, but maybe I just had.
Also, that's not any part of the rule. The whole leaving the ice thing is.
Well, but that's what I mean. That's what is a distinct kick. That's where my argument comes in. It's what is a distinct kick? Because to the naked eye, that doesn't look like a kick.
There's one thing that would have poked the biggest hole in my argument, and I still would have argued my point here, but there are players who tried to redirect. They tried that whole thing where they kick their leg out, but not at the puck
to redirect.
Yeah, but they end up kicking the puck in. But because they made that redirecting motion, I can't remember who scored this. The ref called it good, and I think
Chris Tierney earlier this year. I remember the exact goal,
and I think that was the wrong call. But a lot of Flames fans justifiably brought that up, and they were like, "Why the hell did this count?" And I thought my immediate thought was, "You're right," and that shouldn't have.
And there was a few more posted after that, but that was obviously the most egregious one. And to me, it's kind of you can't change the precedents now because of the circumstance.
The NHL, just watch me.
Oh God, I know. There is so much going into this that is kind of what is the backing for my whole argument. Nothing's distinct. Nothing is conclusive. There was nothing presented to definitively overturn the call on the ice, which again, the NHL beats to death. If not conclusive, call on the ice stance.
Okay. You let us know whether you're on Twitter, tweet at us. If you're on YouTube or something, you can leave comments, Facebook, whatever. Let us know. Kick or no kick. I'll be interested to see where this one lands. I think.
And please argue kick or no kick, because nobody's disagreeing that Coleman knew what he was doing.
Yeah.
Nobody's arguing. I'm on Ryan's side for that. I do not accept that argument. He knew what he was doing. It just comes down to, did he kick that goddamn puck?
I do think before we jump into Marco Kasper here, I do think the NHL is going to this offseason further clarify what a distinct kicking motion is, which is going to muddy the waters even more. And it's going to be.
Yeah, they almost have to get to the point of, and I don't want to see this, if it goes off your foot, like intentionally in any manner, it can't count.
Yeah.
If you're standing there and, oh shit, it hit my foot and it went in, fine. But if like you're angling your foot or you're kicking it or whatever, if you knew you were trying to get that puck in the net with your foot, it can't count. I don't want to see that, but that's the only way they make it definitive.
Meanwhile, you have Zach Hyman acting as a human post.
Oh,
that's a massive redirection.
Oh, that's literally 4D chess. It's one of the smartest hockey plays I've seen in a long time for Edmonton to set that up intentionally.
Incredible.
It's beautiful.
Okay.
And it worked again 2 games later.
That's the kind of stuff I watch where I'm like, they might do this.
Yeah.
We are going to jump into our 2022 NHL entry draft prospect profile, and this is a player who a lot of Red Wings fans are talking about, Marco Kasper, centerman from Rogla in the SHL. You'll know that team, obviously, from Moritz Seider's time there, but Marco Kasper is an interesting prospect, and one who I wouldn't be surprised to see his name called in the top 10. I'm going to preface this by saying I've gone a lot of different directions on Marco Kasper, and I'm not sure where I am now, but why don't we start us off, Brad? Let us know what you think about him and where he would fall even close to number 8 overall.
He's probably the toughest guy in the top 20 for me to gauge.
Tougher than Geeky.
Yes. Because Geeky, I fully understand what he is as a player. For him, it's just a conversation about, will he hit his ceiling? Because I think we all understand what his ceiling is. I don't know that with Kasper. He's kind of that guy, jack of all trades, master of none. I have a hard time falling in love with Marco Kasper as a prospect because he doesn't do anything that looks overly impressive to me. Not a tremendous skate, not one of the best skaters in the draft, not one of the best shooters in the draft, not one of the highest hockey IQ players in the draft, not one of the best puck handlers in the draft, not one of the best passers in the draft. But he's also not bad at any of those things. So I can't really poke holes in his game. I can't say, here's what I definitively do not like about his game. Right? So how do you project a guy where you love nothing about him, but you also don't hate anything about him? You know what I mean? Like, yeah. Is his ceiling a first liner? Well, I can't look at anything it does and go, yeah, it is. Because the answer for me is no. Do I see a reality where I'm like, oh, this guy, there's no way this guy misses out on the NHL? I'm like, well, yeah, no, I think everything about his game is so solid that he has to make the NHL. I'll be shocked if he doesn't. But where I ultimately think I fall on him is, yeah, he's probably pretty good third line, maybe second line center if everything falls right.
Is that not
where I ultimately fall in relation to the Red Wings? Is that's not what I'm looking for in the top 10. It's like, are you going to get a player there? Yeah. Are you probably going to get a pretty good player there? Yeah. Are you getting a top 10 level talent? Unless a lot of his skill set dramatically improves, probably not. Because I know you brought him up and we were talking about it before we were recording. Marco Kasper versus Connor Geeky. This is where ceiling versus floor debate gets super interesting because we know Connor Geeky's ceiling could be super high, but he has a long way to go on so many things for that to happen. But we also know because of his skill set, Connor Geeky's floor is probably third or fourth line center, something along the lines of what a Michael Rasmussen is now. I don't see Marco Kasper's ceiling being very much higher than that. But I will also argue, I think Marco Kasper is more likely to hit his ceiling than a Connor Geeky. But when Geeky's floor and Kasper's ceiling aren't all that dramatic, I tend to fall for take the swing. You know what I mean?
I get that. And I think philosophically, I would agree. I think that kind of argument becomes a lot more prominent the closer you get to the top 2 or 3 picks. And I'm not saying you have to have the top 2 or 3 pick, but when the Red Wings were drafting 4th or 6th or 6th or 6th or 6th, that's the kind of thing that stood out a lot more to me. But at 8, I feel like they're just on that cusp where they pretty much have to bank on the 7 teams before them to let something slip. Otherwise, they're looking at the next tier, so to speak. Here's a comparison, and I'm not necessarily talking about playing style, but just in terms of how flashy they are, perception coming into the draft in terms of, offensive upside and star power in any specific area. Anton Lundell.
For me, there were elite traits with Lundell that I don't see in Kasper.
And I'll concede that I'm not sure that I have that same read with Kasper as with Lundell, because I think when Lundell was drafted, a lot of people said, that's a great pick. That's a great value for you drafting him.
Yeah, Lundell was that guy, the hockey IQ was so off the charts. You're like, yeah, I get it. I see it.
I think Marco Kasper.
And also with Lundell, the production was off the charts, where Lundell's is acceptable, but not anything special. And never has been, not just in the SHL level.
I think Marco Kasper plays a complete enough game at center at his age where I'm like, there has to be way above average hockey IQ there. Everyone you talk to or everyone who's said anything about him keeps talking about his maturity, his ability to learn, his responsibility in both ends, and the fact that doesn't mean he shies away from, driving up the middle or getting in the dirty areas or creating high danger chances or whatever. It doesn't necessarily come at the expense of at least doing those things offensively. But like you said, the production hasn't been off the charts. I don't disagree in terms of overall ceiling. I think Kaspers isn't necessarily low, but it's cloudy. I can't peg where he's at. Could be something like Lundell, where it's like, hey, this is a way better center than maybe people give him credit for, and Kasper could be a bona fide number 2C of the Red Wings. You can't look at Kasper and project him as a first line center, otherwise he'd be ranked way higher, right? He could, of course, any player could turn into that much better of a player, but as the information we have right now, I think a great result for Kasper would be a solid second line center, which would be something I would love for the Red Wings to pick. But like you said, could you swing for the fences and get a top pairing defenseman if Nemec or Juracek are there? Could you get Geeky, who could be a player where a lot of people are beating themselves up because they passed over him because he can just create offense at will if that's how he turns out to be the NHL? That's tough. But I look at Kasper and I look at a guy who's already doing the things that you need to do to play the hardest position in terms of, converting this to NHL talent. It's hard to get drafted as a center and stay as a center. Seems like he's doing everything right. He's doing it in both zones. He works his absolute ass off. He's getting better. Everyone, I'm looking at the notes here from, I think it's Scott Wheeler's rankings, and he talked about what Cam Abbott said about Kasper. And obviously, managers and coaches are going to talk about their own players through the roof, but it's really promising stuff, right? So, yeah, that kind of guy who has that kind of hockey IQ and who can play that position and continues to get better, I can't rule him out of a possible pick for the Red Wings at 8 in terms of what the Red Wings need and what Yzerman might be looking for. And I can't even rule him out of this would be someone who I would love to see on the Red Wings just because of what he can do, potentially, positionally speaking, and maybe his ceiling is higher than we're giving him credit for. What I will say is I agree with you. There's a lot of much more enticing talent in terms of top end in and around him, so you'd have to be pretty certain about Kasper and how he translates.
Yeah, the argument in favor of Kasper is he's a 17-year-old playing in one of the best leagues in the world on a very good team. He has very little room for error in order to maintain a roster spot, so he probably is playing a little more conservatively because, well, he can't make mistakes or he ain't playing. So once he gets a little older, a little better, a little more skill, he can open up and really, flexes his talent. The argument I have against that with myself is, well, he wasn't a giant producer in the J20 in Sweden either. He wasn't bad, but he never kicked the doors down in that league either. So
it was about a point per game this season before he got moved up.
Which isn't bad, but that's not like guys who get picked in the 20s in the second round do that. So there's definitely something to be intrigued about, but what it ultimately falls down to I can't speak English, but there's going to be a lot of options when the Red Wings pick, no matter how the draft falls. What are you looking for? Because if we're just talking centers, there's a really strong likelihood that when the Red Wings get to 8, they're going to have their choice of Savoy, Nazer, Geeky, and Kasper. At worst, probably 3 of them. And if you want to throw Brad Lambert in there, possibly 5. I don't think think there's a great argument that Kasper's ceiling is higher than at the very least Yzer and Savoy. So am I going to be happy taking a safer bet and a more projectable player when guys like that are available? No, probably not. Right? We have a little more certainty with Kasper than those other 4 guys. But again, talent-wise, I think of those 5, he's probably 5th.
I would, and this is like a lot of pieces falling.
And that's not even factoring in defense.
Right. This is a lot of pieces falling in a specific way, but I would really like to see if the Red Wings really want Kasper, sure, great. Trade back.
Yeah.
But then again, that's also assuming that a team doesn't want to draft a centerman way higher. Yeah. Centermen and defensemen get drafted way higher than their stock all the time. Not all of them universally, but if you're going to see a reach, it's usually for those 2. So I don't even know that a trade back would be the option. And then it's like, is the team really going to want to trade? It's a whole thing. It's very hard to do. So
yeah. And if you're saying, well, what happens if Savoy and Yzer and Geekie all go ahead of Detroit's pick because the run on centers? Then if you're the Red Wings, you smile and nod because that means probably one of the defensemen fell. So it's great scenarios either way.
Yeah. So yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of people who are really big on Kasper who maybe won't like a more conservative projection of him. I will say he's in there with Cutter Gauthier and some other people I'm continually rewatching old stuff and just trying to find out whatever I can about them because I think there's a little bit of mystery around who they are as a player. So intriguing to say the least. I certainly wouldn't hate to see him on the Red Wings, but it would be another gutsy pick in my mind.
Yeah.
Which Yzerman and the Red Wings are no stranger to.
No, if anybody's even mentioned him in the breath of number 8, not gutsy enough for Yzerman.
He's just going to draft Moritz Seider again.
Yeah, we're like, I don't know who the guy is, but like someone, Jagger Furcus, congrats, come on down.
Honestly, if I watch that, I go, yeah, all right.
Yeah,
let's do it. We watched him play. He was great.
Yeah, why not? It's going to be that guy. It's going to be someone we've never even discussed the possibility of at 8. We just don't know who it is yet. And the fact that I just brought up Furcus, well, congrats. It's not him now.
Yeah, usually it's Evan who gets it right. Okay, we're going to jump into overtime here and wrap up this episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast. Overtime is first brought to you by our Patreon supporters, patreon.com/Winged Wheel Podcast. If you want to support the show, join the Dub Club, get in on the action on Discord and everything else, and just generally be closer as people to us 3 hosts. So for better or worse, maybe that's not such a good sell. But no, seriously, thank you to all of you who support the show, especially through the off season. That is why we're able to keep the show running and give you this pre-draft content. First comment here from Clint Benesh, who says, hypothetical, the Canadians want to get out from Price's contract. What does it cost them? What is Stevie asking for? This year's first? Next year's first? Plus or minus that? There's no world where the Habs would trade this year's first, but in terms of what would it cost to get rid of Price's contract? And I want to qualify by saying I think he'll LTI retire.
Yeah, it would cost a lot because there's a lot of uncertainty with them and a lot of term and a lot of cap hit.
1, 2, 3, 4 more years at $10.5
like you're talking multiple high-end futures to unload that. But I think 2 things happen here in all likelihood. Carey Price is healthy enough to play still, and he's the goaltender of the Montreal Canadiens for the foreseeable future. Or he's not, and then he's LTI retired.
So
now that does present a problem for Montreal, though, because they already have Shea Weber in there. And that's
almost $8 million in there.
That would be like 18 million of LTIR. And that there is a limit on LTIR. Okay. So they would likely still want to move out one of those contracts, but they will have to give up assets to do it. Just if it's to a team that knows they're going to LTIR them, it's not that much of a premium.
It's a healthy Price who's not playing well, but isn't LTI retiring. Yeah, you're talking first plus high-end prospect plus probably another one, if not another bunch of high-end picks. Like it would be quite pricey. A second-round pick moved 1 year of Mark Stahl. 1 year of Mark Stahl. And some people saw that as an underpayment from the Rangers. So there's quite a bit going on
But
there.
That was with the also understanding that Mark Stahl was not going to be LTIR'd, which means you're eating all of that cap hit no matter what, which might not be the circumstance with Price, which is the only thing kind of saving Montreal here.
This is a funny comment from elite clutch goal scoring Darren Helm Stan Club. Says, "Oh, I'm sorry. I was told Darren Helm couldn't shoot." That was a hysterical goal for Helm to score too. Like just that clapper without any stick handling beforehand.
The level at which I groaned watching Darren Helm successfully fire a puck through an entire fleet of traffic and a goalie in front of him after watching him take a billion shots in his career with just him and the goalie there and firmly hitting the goalie dead center.
Darbeck says, "I just got a Mo Seider autographed puck from his debut game." That's awesome. So it got me thinking, do any of you have any Red Wings items / collectibles that you'd fight in orangutan every year to keep safe?
Multiple.
You have your signed Gordy jersey.
Correct.
I would do that to protect that jersey for you.
I also have a personalized autographed Lidstrom jersey.
I didn't know that. Did I?
It was there. You've seen it.
Oh, yeah. Then I probably just... the Mark Stahl 1000 shirts. Okay. Lars, the prophet of the towering behemoth, says, "Hey guys, at what date do you think we'll know the new head coach at the absolute latest?"
I have a hard time imagining they're going past the draft.
I have that as a benchmark in my head too. I think a lot of people think it's going to be further out, but that's because you don't hear anything. Like, okay, they're interviewing Trotz, and let's say they're interviewing Trotz and that was even sooner than what they were anticipating because Yzerman wanted to take more time to research, etc. If you're interviewing Trotz, then you're interviewing as many other people as you can, because if you want to choose Trotz, you need to know for sure that you're choosing Trotz. So I don't even think they did push the timeline up. I think they got on the work right away, but I would have to imagine the draft is that benchmark as well.
And also that a few new teams have emerged as in need of a coach. It's more competition. The longer you wait, the more names start dropping off the board.
Yeah, it's
you want to do your due diligence, but waiting hurts them at this point.
Yeah. Okay, this one is from Babe Landeskog. Says, "My partner had tea and there was a quote on the tag that said, 'Impression is for the now, trust is for the future.' I think this is good for hockey, both in terms of scouting and playoffs. Right now, some relatively unproven teams in the conference finals. Could also relate to the Yzer plan. So that being said, who has made the best impressions to lead you to trust in the player and or organization? For me, Yzerman with Tampa Bay into Detroit and Avs into the Western Conference Finals gives me a lot of trust since they made it over the hump." All I can think of right now is the Tampa Bay players. You look at what they did with Toronto and you look at what they did with Florida. Those are guys who found a way to dig deep when maybe they weren't playing their best hockey, or maybe for some of the games Vasilevsky didn't show up for them, or maybe they lost Braden Point long term and they still found a way to show up. And to me, they've done that. This is altogether the same core that won the previous two cups. That's why, despite all of my hopes that they wouldn't, three-peat, I think they have a fantastic chance to do so.
So is this just question basically stating who's earned your trust that this isn't just an impression, this is who they are?
Yeah.
Okay. It's a cop-out answer. Connor McDavid. He's done it in the regular season as well. When was the last time Connor McDavid had a bad week?
No.
And the fact that his game has elevated in the playoffs. He went from the best player in the world to the super mega best player in the world. I mean, he made one of the best teams in the league look absolutely ridiculous after basically wiping his ass with the Kings the week prior. Like, I mean, come on.
He has like a bad minute and everyone's like, "Oh, see, Connor McDavid got shut down," and then he goes and scores 4 points that game. He
said in a post-game interview, he had a garbage game where he was riding his teammate's coattail in a game in which he scored the overtime winner. I mean, come on.
Okay, let's take one more question here from Patreon. Jake Nagy says, "Johnny Gaudreau is coming off a 115-point season, second most in the NHL behind McDavid. He's 28 and expected to get paid $8.5 to $10 million on his next deal per year. Prashant has shared his belief that this summer merits Stevie choosing a direction in the rebuild. Perhaps it's a little premature for this, but a guy who can score 115 points in a season doesn't grow on trees. So would you have any interest in signing Gaudreau to something like 7 years, $10 million? We have the most cap room and could probably offer him max dollars."
Short answer, no.
Long answer, no. No, I'm kidding. I just wanted to make the joke.
Long answer, you have to understand the Red Wings have a ton of cap space right now. But Larkin, Seider, and Raymond are not far off getting significant raises. And those raises are going to come in. Johnny Gaudreau's, Larkin sooner, but Seider and Raymond, Johnny Gaudreau is going to be 30. Do I think Johnny Gaudreau will be a very good player into his 30s? Yeah, probably. Do I think in the Red Wings contention window, Johnny Gaudreau is going to be worth $10 million? No, probably not.
Okay, time for some Reddit questions here. A Hawk says, what do you guys think the extensions for Larkin and Bertuzzi's will look like, assuming they're signed this offseason? My guess will be Larkin will take a slight discount and come in 8 years.
Term.
8 years. I'll go friendly and say 8 years, 8.25.
I was going to say 8.5, so I think we're in the same ballpark.
Yeah. I think Larkin's ask will probably come in around 9.5 to start. That's without knowing what goes on in the room. Like that's what I would imagine.
I think Bertuzzi will be looking for something around a 6x5, maybe a 7x4 or 5 years, somewhere in that range.
6 million by 5 years, you mean?
Yeah,
okay.
In that range. I don't think anybody's going to be throwing 7 or 8 year terms at Bertuzzi right now, just because of the health questions and the not significant length of time where he's produced at this rate, but we'll see.
I could see Tyler Bertuzzi. I can see the variance in terms of what he's asking for and what value is or what Yzerman's willing to offer being way wider of a separation.
Yeah.
Like I could see him looking for 8.
Oh, he should be looking for 8. I mean, he's not, a year older than Larkin? He probably knows this is also the last super significant contract of his career, so.
And, those haven't been easy negotiations. Yeah. What is the Evolving Hockey? What's their salary projection for Bert is 5 by 6,905,000. So almost 7. So
would you believe I did not look at that beforehand? Hand to God.
So yeah, I could see Bert asking for way more than that. I think the term on, like you said, I think the term on Bert is going to be interesting. I always default to max term in my head, but that's different for Bert. It is.
He has way more question marks around him than Larkin does.
Also, what do you think the chances are for an early extension for Seider, and what would that deal look like? I think the chances are good.
The Red Wings should not waste time. Price is only going up with him.
Yeah. It's like stocks during the bull run that just ended for the last however many years. Like the price just goes up. Buy whatever, the price is going to go up. And that's what is happening with Moritz Seider. So defensemen aren't cheap. Elite defensemen aren't cheap. Elite stalwart, like you need this guy to be a pillar of your team for generations. Defensemen aren't cheap. And if you ever have a chance to get one, you buy it as early as you can because the price is just going to go up.
Yeah. And I think in my mind with Seider, I'm in the camp of Detroit's window is going to be in his next contract. Don't bother with this bridge bull, whatever. Like
as long as you can.
Yeah.
Immediately sign him for as long as you can.
If whatever 8-year contract you can get him on, just do it because if you bridge that next contract, which could still be in the Red Wings window, is going to be more. So yeah, I understand that if you go max now, his contract expires while he's still like 29, 30 years old. And I understand the downsides to that. Don't care. The window is going to be in this contract.
You're probably looking at least 6.5, 7 mil at the very least. Well,
no,
depending on how many years they buy.
Because he's eligible for an extension after the season, right?
Yeah.
If he repeats what he did this year,
it'll be $8 million.
Oh, no, my poor child. He's going to be closer to 10 than he will 8.
I don't think we'll see Seider close to 10.
I would argue that Mo Seider is already as good as, if not better, worst case, in the ballpark of Seth Jones and Darnell Nurse, who just got north of $9 million each.
Yeah, but they got overpaid.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
no
arguments here.
Black Panther gif. We don't do that here.
That's That's the market for defensemen, because look at what Heiskanen got. Look at what Makar got. North of $9 million is the market for elite defensemen.
Okay, last question here from Let's Kill Time says, first of all, Bert should not be traded at all due to his compete level and the contagion. I don't know if that was a pun. If he does, what type of premium do you think Stevie should charge for trading him within division versus sending him to the Western Conference? If Larkin doesn't sign the extension before the next season starts, should we expect Stevie to consider trading him or continue trying to sign him? First of all, with Yzerman, you have to assume all options are at the table at all times.
Look, what do you do with Stamkos?
With Larkin being a centerman and the only star centerman they have and the captain, I think it's much less likely that it gets traded, but he's going to do his due diligence on what he can garner.
I will say this, though, to follow up that point in particular with Bertuzzi and Larkin, because by the trade deadline, they will know and have a very clear picture of where they are at in negotiations. If it is not particularly close, like say Larkin's asking for 9.5 and Steve's not offering more than 7.5, that's a gap that's probably not getting rectified between then and the end of the season. Or more importantly, then and the UFA window.
Mm-hmm.
You can't let players of that caliber walk for nothing. Now,
he did it with Stammer.
But there were two key differences with Stamkos that we should probably establish now, because hopefully it doesn't become relevant, but if it does become relevant, Tampa was in a win now window. Stamkos could look at the Tampa Bay Lightning and go, well, if I do resign, I could win the Stanley Cup this year.
Mm-hmm.
And two, the Tampa Bay Lightning were in a win now mode. Futures at the trade deadline didn't mean much to them at that point in time.
Right.
Both those things do not apply to the Red Wings right now. So you could get a hell of a lot of things to help the Red Wings for the next 10 years if Larkin refuses to sign in Detroit. Same with Bertuzzi. It's different. I know it's what all I'm using the Stamkos equivalent for in contract is Steve Yzerman ain't going to lose if it turns into a game of chicken. If they're $500,000 apart at the trade deadline, Steve Yzerman will call that bluff. But if they're not close, Steve Yzerman's probably too smart to let him go for nothing.
Well, that's a hypothetical that I wouldn't bet that we get close to.
I'm hoping the day he's eligible for an extension, it is signed, because I am not mentally prepared to do this for a full season.
We haven't had to stomach that before.
We've never dealt with this. The closest we got was when Steven Stamkos was going through it.
I don't think it's likely, and I'm going to say that more emphatically because I don't want it to be true. All right, we're going to wrap up this episode of the Winged Wheel podcast and record our Patreon exclusive overtime. Thank you all so much for tuning in. I appreciate you putting up with just Brad and I with no Evan to temper us this episode. Want me to tell you about a funny comment we got in the overtime. We'd like to thank all of our listeners of the show, new listeners and old. Thank you so much for tuning in. I know the off season is a different time, no Red Wings hockey, but we really appreciate the support of all of you, of our patrons, our name level sponsors, Arjun Shankar, Yves Bartels on behalf of the Sarah Grand Foundation, Aikfer, the Stay Fresh Cheese Bag, Nick Perks, Brett Bailey, Terry, the driver of number 69, crying Ryan Hanna's Banana Slam and Jamathong, Matthew M. Rice, Batman should lose his job based on the Yotes, changed my mind, Brandon M., Carl Buchanan and Aluski, Chimmy, Chumbawamba, not Chumbawamba, Citizen High Five, Coyote season tickets in Tempe, Craig Kibble, Daniel Garcia, Derek Enstam, DJ Denton, Doesn't Tuesn't, Give Blood, Fight Probert, Greach, Hassam Al-Qassem, I'd Leave My Wife for Cider, Jay Gollum, Jacob Turner, Justin and the Angry Mob, Kalen Wood, King Tone, Kyle Hashman, Marcus, Matt McKay, Nicholas Fritz, R.A., Ryan Hubbard, Scott Martin, Sean Levine, Stay Fresh Cheese Bags, Zach Spring, Sam Bankson, Stay Fresh Cheese Bags, Adam Now I Finish Better Than Ernie, Antonio Gracias, Babe Landeskog, Ben Barron, Connor Leighton, Dave W., Evans Parking Garage, Evans Bingo Card, James Laporte, Jeremiah Dobo, Jeremy Brocker, JM Rhapsody, John Evans, Josh Yelton, Kevin McCracken, Quaz, Matt Keeler, Matt S., Maximilian Cheesebags, missing Vladdy more than ever, Papa Woody, Puck Norris, Revi DeLuca, The two good hosts of the Winged Wheel podcast, Trevor Pebavar, Wish.com Shea Weber, Zach Handyside, and Zach McCann, Driving Range Superstar. Thanks so much. We're going to go post bail for Evan.
Thanks for tuning in to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Be sure to check out wingedwheelpodcast.com, where you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You'll also find links to other ways to support the show, such as Patreon, official podcast apparel, and more. And don't forget to follow the show on Twitter at Winged Wheel Pod. And of course, the hosts at Brad Crisco, at Ryan Hanna WWP, and at Hockeytown Evan.